You may be liable for your realtor's commissions even if you have a sale that doesn't close.
In today's video, we are going to be discussing sales that don't close, the current spring real estate market, as well as the legal responsibilities that may come of you as a seller, even if your property doesn't close.
My name is Koukun Unosawa, and I'm a realtor and mortgage broker here in the Niagara region.
And my name is Ryan Dick, and I'm a realtor here in the Niagara region.
If you're interested in learning more about what we do, there are some links in the description below, or you can even book a quick 15-minute call with either of us to discuss your real estate needs. All right, let's get into it. Yeah, so Ryan, you had a listing that just sold this past Sunday.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, what was it like listing a property in, spring of 2024, some of the thoughts that went into the preparation, and how did it actually end up going?
For sure, yeah. So I've been getting a lot of questions lately, about obviously the market as a whole. I think, 2023 was kind of a pretty steady grind down, and the market's definitely changing, right? I think prices seem to be stable, but activity's really picked up a lot. And I think we saw that a lot with this past listing. Like, we listed it on Thursday, which is kind of what we always do with our listing strategies. And, we had, I think, 7 showings between Thursday and Saturday. And then we hosted an open house on Saturday. And we ended up getting, I think, 17 people who came through.
Oh, wow. That's pretty
so
good.
we had a really big, busy open house. Ultimately, one of the people from the open house brought us an offer, and somebody who showed it prior to the open house also brought us an offer. And so we had competing offers on it. Ended up working with the 2 of them, and ultimately ended up getting one accepted just on status certificate review. So, hopefully that will firm up by the end of the week. But
Perfect.
Vastly different change than, listing something in October.
Yeah.
I can even touch a little bit on, I had a listing that we listed it last August, and we had it listed from August through the end of November before we decided to take it off for the holidays.
Yep.
We relisted it in the spring at the beginning of February, and we relisted it back at the same price, same house. And all of a sudden we went from, getting like 1 showing every other week to getting like 5-6 showings a week, and ultimately ended up getting an accepted offer and got that property sold. So the activity in the market is definitely picking up, and having a house that's priced well is obviously a huge factor to kind of getting that activity level. But there's definitely some pent up demand that I'm kind of feeling in the market. How about you? I know you kind of also had some listings going on this weekend. A little different story there. Could probably even touch on the fall to spring contrast even more.
So I know both of those examples you described were in the Niagara region, right? In Welland and in Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
So the listing I'm going to talk about is actually my own property that I had rented out and then that I tried to sell. I listed this in November and sold it. And then the buyer ended up backing out of the transaction, and not during the conditional period, but 5 days before the closing date. So we had to go relist the property for sale. This is a condo in Mississauga. And we also this past weekend have got it sold. Not as much activity as what you described. So I only had four showings, a 5th, booked and canceled. So really not that many people, but 2 of them brought offers. They improved on the second round, and it ended up selling for $80,000 over what I had sold it for last November.
Yeah.
And to give context, it was a $680 sale and a $760 sale. Now, that is quite the contrast. I don't know if the overall market, even in Mississauga, has moved that much. The big determining factor was there was another unit in that building that they had initially overpriced it.
Right.
That sat through the holidays, and then that sold for $760. And the buyer who bought my unit was one of the offers in a multiple offer situation on that other unit.
Okay.
They lost. Someone else paid $760 and bought it. So on some level, they really wanted a unit in this building. My unit was the only unit, and in competition, they were willing to go up to that price.
Yeah. Kind of almost reset the market with the pricing there.
And I have another unit coming up for sale in that building. And I told the person who lost out, hey, if your buyer is now willing to come up to $760, we can probably get this sale done for another unit in the building. At that point, that becomes the market. You have 3 identical units that have sold at the same price. So we'll see if that goes through. But
it is interesting how competition does that. When you listed the property in the fall, was there other units listed in the building?
At that time, This other unit was listed.
So the one that was
The one that
overpriced.
sold that was overpriced. So at that time, I listed it at 679.
Okay.
And I sold it for 680. So exactly what I listed it for. Happened very quickly within a couple of days. Even back then, I may have underpriced it because I did have some people say they'd offer up to 7.
Right.
Right. And I thought, based on where the market was at that time, that was the realistic price, 687. Right.
Yep.
I didn't want to overprice it and have it sit on the market. At least that was the intention back then. It's funny to see that this other unit overpriced and it actually worked out for them.
Yeah.
They just had to wait long enough for the market to kind of catch up to that that price. But yeah, back then there was I had another unit in that building that I sold. I had this unit. Not a whole lot of listings in that building, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah, I find it interesting. A couple things that you mentioned there. One so I've had a couple times I've had buyers or seller, like buyers not close on the property, whether it was my buyer or my seller. Kind of not really the point here, but usually when that happens, it's because the market went down. Right? Like the market went down, buyer can no longer get financing, bank kind of pull something or whatever like that. So just the loss is too big, and the buyer says, "I just can't take this loss. I'm going to walk away and risk the chance that you'll sue me," kind of thing. This obviously wasn't the case there, which is kind of interesting because it seems like obviously the market went up. There was a recent sale, and these people still decided to walk away from the sale. Was there like personal reasons for that, or did they kind of have something with the financing side that also kind of fell through?
So I spoke to the buyer, and she actually wanted to speak to me directly to, on some level, apologize to me for not closing. And her exact words to me were, she was working with a mortgage, quote unquote, mortgage broker. This person wasn't even licensed.
Nice.
And he had done something for some family members. So there was that sort of connection that way. So there was a bit of trust. This person took a 10% down payment as a deposit. And he said he needed to collect it from her in order to give her a pre-approval. And this guy disappears. And she gave me the name of that person. And I searched him up on the, there's a group called the FRSA. They're the licensing body for mortgage brokers. This guy has an article about him that from like 2 years ago, that he poses as a mortgage professional lending through his companies. Just be aware he's not licensed and he just defrauds people, right?
Wow.
So again, I don't know if she made this up or if this was the reality, but that was her situation. And like, if I were in her shoes, I would have done, I guess she didn't fully know how much the market moved in that time. But if she had known there was like a $80,000 to walk away from, even get a private mortgage or something to like close on the deal and then even relist the property.
Resell it and instead of having, obviously, maybe you worked out something with her, but she's still liable to be sued by, everything like that and lose her deposit and, it's crazy.
So what we ended up actually doing, and because I wasn't too worried about selling the property for significantly less than the initial sale price,
right?
We worked out that she initially gave a $10,000 deposit. My carrying cost for the 3 months I was just holding this property for her was about the same. Actually, it was a little bit more than that because I have to pay my lawyer a little bit for a failed transaction and all of that. So, but we just agreed that we'll do a mutual release. She walks away from this deal, but she leaves the deposit with me to cover my carrying cost.
Right.
And it's interesting because what most people may not know is if you are a buyer and you have a firm contract on a property, if you don't close due to your own negligence or your fault, you actually are liable for the buyer's agent commission. And the seller's not going to pay that because the transaction didn't go through. You as the buyer are liable, and the buyer's agent can actually sue you for that. So in a way, by me signing this mutual release, the mutual release has my name, her name. Both brokerages also have to sign off on it.
Right.
So when they sign off on it, they
releases them.
They are releasing the buyer. So in a way, that was on a $680,000. That's a $20,000 odd commission that she could have been liable to that buyer's agent, but through this mutual release process. And I talked to the other agent. I think it's not common for a realtor to sue their client for a commission on a transaction that doesn't happen. It's, we've had a situation like that where we could have done that, but it just wasn't what we wanted to do.
Yeah,
Or
not a great way to make money.
yeah, exactly. But it's just something interesting. And the curious part is she spoke to her lawyer about it, and the lawyer told her, no, that doesn't make sense. Your buyer's agent can't sue you. I went through the buyer representation agreement and I took the paragraph that explicitly states once you have, I forget the exact wording, but once there is a firm transaction and the transaction fails due to the buyer's negligence, the buyer is responsible for the commission. And it's because it doesn't talk about a closed sale. It's a
firm deal. Technically, as you know, I had an instance with a condo closing recently, and I had the other agent who was also actually the seller in the situation, and there was a little bit of a mix-up with, he warranted that something was included in the condo fees and it ended up not being included in the condo fees. And so basically upon closing, like, this was discovered, and the lawyer wanted basically a rebate for what was not included in the condo fees. And so the agent called me like, hey, you need to talk to your buyer, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, hey man, like, technically speaking, when the deal's kind of gone firm in terms of negotiations and stuff like that, we as realtors are not really responsible, not really actually supposed to be negotiating any further. At that point in time, it's kind of set up to be with the lawyers, which is kind of interesting because, like, your job theoretically is done. So you're owed your commission at that point in time. If something else comes up, then it's not necessarily, it's usually due to the mortgage side of things or the legal side of things or something like that. And so, you're still owed your commission, obviously.
Practically, it's not common, but there was, when this whole situation came up, I even read an article of a situation in Vaughan where someone was trying to sell, a property that was like $1 million, north of $1 million, right? What was the exact scenario? But it was a strange scenario. They sold it, the buyer failed to close, and that person chose not to relist it with this agent because of the failed transaction. They, I believe, went off with another agent to purchase a home, and they ended up selling their home for something crazy, like $100,000 or something, less than the initial sale price. So they took a hit on this failed transaction. The first realtor,
the listing realtor,
the first one with the failed transaction, then sued the seller saying, hey, I want my commission from the sale. Not because the seller was tied to that. Once the transaction failed, the listing contract, I think, expired. But it was more, I brought you a buyer, I put a firm deal together. Even if it doesn't close, I'm owed my commission. And this seller was like in shock because they took like $100,000 hit on this sale just to get it sold.
They're already bleeding, and now we're just gonna keep grinding them for
and now they're like, oh, I have to pay another $50,000. I think technically they could sue the buyer for that 100 and even the listing commission, but even the listing agent can't necessarily sue the buyer. They're suing the seller. The seller then has to go sue the buyer for everything. But
really a messy scenario.
Just it's a tough scenario. And what I've learned through this is, like, when possible, get a bigger deposit, like even $10,000. So here in the Niagara region, we accept deals for even $5,000. But it's become sort of commonplace in the GTA where people are asking for like 5% of the purchase price,
which
deposits.
Covers the realtor's commission, essentially.
Covers the realtor's commissions, but also there's some skin in the game that like 10,000 she was willing to walk away from, 30 maybe. She's looking at private lenders. She's looking at ways like, how can I just close this deal? Now, in my case, it worked out. But like, imagine the reverse. I had sold it for $760, and I try to sell it now for $680. That is
which is much more common when somebody walks away from the transaction, right? That is the common scenario that's going to happen. And like now you're in a real pickle.
So overall, what are your thoughts, Ryan, on where is the market at now? So obviously we're in a better place than last fall. If you had to pick a similar time to the current market last year, is there a time last year that reminds you of the current time?
Not really. I mean, I remember last spring we also kind of had a bit of an uptick
Yeah.
in activity. I think the sale prices were actually higher last
Yes.
spring in the sale activity. I think a lot of that was kind of due to where people thought the overall economy was going,
Yeah.
particularly the interest rates.
Yeah.
But to me, this feels like a much more, I almost want to say, a balanced market in terms of demand being more regular like across the board, I guess, right? In terms of the different demographics of buyers, the different style of homes, the different price points and everything like that. It feels that demand is kind of coming back in all areas because I feel like there's a lot more certainty, or at least there's a feel of a lot more certainty on the buyer side.
Yeah.
Right? Before, even when we had the uptick last spring, it was kind of like, oh, they hit a pause. Maybe they're still going to raise. Let's get in before they raise again because we only know we can afford this much. Whereas now it feels like, okay, the interest rate craziness is, hopefully kind of over, or at least settled into it. So now people have that confidence that they know they're going to go shopping. They can lock into whatever they're going to lock into, a 3 or a 5 year term. And they know that's not going to go wacko out from there and potentially cause them to be in a really bad scenario.
Yeah.
So, I mean, honestly, it's been, I think, many years since we've been in a market like this, where it's, it's a balanced market. If you price something well, like we both priced our listings, what I would say fairly to aggressively, with the idea of trying to, get buyers in and get them to, act. And we were able to do that, but both of them, still had conditions on them, right?
Yep.
Even, a couple years ago when the market was crazy like that, people wouldn't even give you a status certificate condition. They'd do a quick review it over with their, lawyer or a friend or something like that. And they just think, okay, let's risk it. Let's just go through and just get this done. So to me, it's nice from a buying side as well from a selling side that, if you price a listing well, that you're likely going to be able to get some activity on and hopefully get it sold in a reasonable period of time. At the same side, when you're a buyer, you're able to do your due diligence and, allowed to shop with confidence as opposed to, dealing with multiple offers and just throwing something at the wall.
And I think it's a common misconception that realtors want those crazy multiple offers. Yes, if you're someone who only does listings, maybe that helps you. It makes the sale process easy. But most realtors, if we're helping a seller sell, we're also probably helping them buy, right?
Yeah.
And it's, and even as a listing agent, do I want a firm offer where, 6 months later they come back saying they found a crack in the foundation that wasn't disclosed, but I didn't know about it, the seller didn't tell me, and then now there's lawsuits going? Or would I rather just prefer the buyer do their due diligence, get an inspection, everyone knows of the condition, we have a reasonable negotiation, buyers willing to come to a compromise, sellers coming to a compromise, and it's just, everyone walking away happy. And
it's a much more fair marketplace, right? Like obviously, if you're selling estate sale homes that are being sold as is and you got 20 offers, like, that's a great time to deal with it. But at the end of the day, like, there's still going to be liability and, you still got to be able to sleep at night, right? And I think you and I probably both got into this business for a very similar reason to, kind of help people with navigate a transaction or situation in their lives. And when we're in a market that's a little bit more balanced or a fair market, whatever you want to call it, you're able to actually really help your clients and you can, not be worrying so much, right? Okay, we've done our due diligence. They've done their due diligence. Everybody has all the information they need to make an informed decision, and you can actually make that decision. And it seems like forever since we've been able to do that. So it's really nice to kind of have that back. Now, obviously the big question is how long is that going to last, but we'll find out.
So I think that's a great place to wrap it up. If you found value in this conversation, if you're looking to list your home, feel free to contact us. We'll leave the contact information in the description below. And if you have any questions about any of the topics we discussed, definitely let us know in the comments below. Until next time, all the best.